Hello, you beautiful people. Hello, internet denizens. How are you guys doing on this fine, sunny day? You know, I usually do record when it's good outside. It makes you feel good seeing those rays of sun. When it makes you want to peel out the blackout curtains and just get in there like swimwear. And today, I'd like to talk about something that I think is an absolute atrocity, some of the most macabre material I can imagine. And that, of course, is going to be the Defense Production Author, or just the Defense Production Act. Sorry, my lips don't want to work. Brain doesn't want to work. Nothing wants to work. That's what getting old is about. You'll have to forgive me, as I am an ancient, degenerate old man. So what is the Defense Production Act of 1950? And it basically has a few things. Let's be clear, this is a socialist fascist document that the President of the United States has. It's one of those horrible, horrible powers that has been named, much like the similarly titled bill that Obama released that allowed the U.S. president to kill anyone he suspects is a terrorist, U.S. citizen or not, just arbitrarily. This is in that same socialist, dictator vein where America's heading towards, this totalitarian collapse. And so this actually happened in the 50s, the roaring 50s, and was part of the way where we're spiraling down towards socialism. So this basically says that if it's deemed necessary for the defense of the nation, the president can force businesses to do things for him, including production, even if they incur a loss. He can, control the economy like you would in a socialist state or like in a communist state, for instance. He can, put people in jail that simply refuse to do certain things for him for the defense of the good of the nation, right? So that's why I'm not really worried about, for instance, getting drafted or whatever and getting thrown in jail, because at some point they're going to throw you in jail if you're a dissenter, if you're not on board with working with, the giant mega corporations. They're going to freeze your accounts. They're going to go after you. And that's going to happen at some point. And one of the mechanisms, or one of the ways they might go about doing it, is attacking, for instance, employers, the Defense Production Act. So, they can basically force your business to produce goods for a war, against some random nation somewhere without your consent. They can force you as an individual. They can, take direct control of the civilian economy and its resources and use it for, quote-unquote, the defense. Now, let's be clear here. This bill has never been used for the defense of America, period. America, within even our grandfathers' lifetimes, there's not been a war where America could claim was defensive by any stretch of the imagination. That just doesn't happen because of geopolitics, right? No one is invading America. There is no defense in any sort of American totalitarian aggression. This is an act where the president can take resources from the civilian economy, take resources from people, and use it much like a communist or socialist government, when they can direct and assume direct control of the factories. They can assume direct control of you as a person. So, if you've ever wondered how the government sees you, if you have any individuality, if you believe you have true freedom in America, you don't. You can't own land. You pay a tax on it, period. And the government will repossess it after you die. It's not generational or anything like that. You can't even own a house or property. I don't pay a tax on my computer after I've purchased it, right? I pay a one-time purchasing fee tax, and I get to use it for, until X amount of time. You don't really pay taxes on things that you physically own on a yearly basis like that. But the government, it's made it pretty clear. You don't actually own your home. You don't actually own your land. You don't own these things. The government does, and they're letting you borrow it. And that's the reality of the situation. And the Defense Production Act, is a horror of legislation. If I could get into political office, there are so many, the National Defense Authorization Act, the Defense Production Act, all of these acts I would do everything in my power to repeal, to start removing presidential powers as soon as humanly possible. There is no reason that in a free and developed nation, in a nation that claims to be a capitalist nation, that these people should have direct authoritative control over civilian economy and its uses. But, for the defense, quote-unquote, it can do so. It's been used by virtually every single president, not once in our lifetime, and probably never will within our lifetime. One can hope, I pray that it'll actually be necessary in our lifetime to use this, but it's unlikely it ever will. Look, the Defense Authorization Act, will never get used for defense. It's a misnomer. It's like a Child Protection Act or whatever. It doesn't really do what it says it does. And this kind of degenerate social cringe-worthy bill. Like, back in a high-trust, racially conscious society, things like this might have been able to go without being abused. But, as soon as Obama splintered the nation, racially speaking, and splintered the trust and the fabric of society, in which that's what Obama did as a president. That's his legacy. Is they did. Scholars will look back and say this is the point in American history where the race wars and all of that started, where degeneracy began, where we were pulled apart at the seams by an egotistical president who believed he was above the law. And he really does, because for instance, his National Defense Authorization Act literally allows him to basically have the power of life and death over people, and he of course assigned himself that law. Just like, I don't even remember what president was alive when this was signed in the 50s. No, I don't remember. I'm not gonna look it up. The exact year and the exact president. One of them 1950 presidents, though. One of them weirdo ones. Who cares? No one remembers. Some power-hungry, degenerate slob that thought this up, put it across someone's desk and had them sign, giving himself unilateral control of the civilian economy if he deems it necessary, which, has been done throughout history. There are too many mechanisms right now in the United States for our liberties, for our rights to be stripped away from us, and that's simply just unacceptable, and it really needs to change. And I don't know, there's no political platform. I will never have political power. I'm not interested in working towards political power because I find the entire system to be disgusting. And the most effective means I can think to protest the system is simply not participating. But, if you actually start looking at some of these laws, looking through what these things do and what they're actually capable of, the powers your government has over you, you can't help but feel disgusted. Like, our ancestors rioted over like a 1% tax on tea at some point. It's crazy how totalitarian things have gone. And, if you haven't read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago, it perfectly is describing what's happening in America today. The constant slide towards this totalitarian hellscape that we're devolving into, right? That we're careening headlong towards without any, brakes on it, without anything. And that's more of a reason to not participate in society, not help out these people, not contribute to this war machine, not back these disgusting degenerates that are, currently in office. Like, think about it. The Epstein client list still is not public knowledge. Why? And, when you think about all these things and piece them together, the United States government is a, Jewish pedophile ring blackmailed by other Jewish pedophiles, right? That's the only way I can put it. And, as a kike myself, that makes me quite depressed, I still remember at my bar mitzvah growing up the way the other, Jews were telling me about how your God's chosen. I never bought it for a second that I am somehow a superior human being to everyone else because of my, chosen race. But, the fact that thinking exists, it's just crazy that there's arguments against, like, white supremacy as an idea when the Jews exist. White supremacy is we want our own ethno-state and we want to be left alone. The Jewish idea of white supremacy is everyone else is cattle meant to work to, feed the superior race and make our lives superior, right? They sow the feeds, we reap the harvest sort of idea. It just boggles my mind that we exist in a society, in a world where that's allowed. And it's very depressing, and these are the people that are running the world. So, think about it. Maybe it's not my mantle to uphold. I'm not going to try and affect this change, right? I can just say what's wrong. I'm powerless. I'm not an aesthetically pleasing enough person to get any sort of political power. You need to be at a certain level of beauty to be able to actually affect political change outside of, just passive resistance. And, at least in the modern system, right? This wasn't always true, but it definitely is today. So I can just do what I can do, and that's making silly YouTube videos near anime girls. And with that, I hope you enjoy at least. If you're liking it, that's great. If not, I'm sorry, I tried. I'm a failure sometimes too. Everyone is. But you have a good day either way. Peace.